Today is just going to be a compilation of 4 different topics that I desperately need to discuss with you because I have very strong opinions about each and every one of them. Starting off with the Nintendo Switch 2, it was revealed last week. We know this, it's been about a week at this point, and finally we know what it looks like. We know that yes, a lot of the leaks were true. We know what it is going to be and when we are going to hear even more about it, which is obviously going to be April 2nd, 2025. We're going to know every single thing about the console, about the games, about everything we could ever want to know, and that is amazing. But a lot of people seem to not have even realized that that is the day when most of the excitement is going to be happening, because the narrative of the Nintendo Switch 2 being a disappointment is very strong right now online, and I genuinely do not understand this. I just don't. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was expectations. I don't know if it was the leaks or what, because a lot of people have said it was the leaks that made them a little bit disappointed with this console, because we pretty much already knew exactly what it was going to look like and exactly what the features of it were going to be. Now, obviously, we don't know technical stuff about it. We don't know what the graphical capabilities are going to be. We don't know what kind of games are going to release on it besides the brand new Mario Kart that was revealed. And by the way, we only got like 20 seconds of that. So I don't understand what people were expecting, because this is just a reveal. They wanted to let us know, hey, the console exists. And we knew that. We knew they were going to reveal the Nintendo Switch 2 before the end of March. We have known that for a long time. Now, just because we have known that doesn't mean that people are going to, temper their expectations and expect things that are realistic. Because people are acting as if we were supposed to get the entire blowout last week. People are acting as if this console was supposed to be something completely different and something completely new. Now, I don't know about you, but if Nintendo had decided to not go with a next iteration of the Nintendo Switch and just decided, oh, let's make another, GameCube type game, or they just completely deviated from the idea of a Switch and they went back to a home console, do you really think that would be better? What is it that people are expecting here? I truly do not understand. Now, a Nintendo Switch 2 is pretty much what every other console generation has done from the other big companies, Microsoft and Sony. Xbox has always followed up their console with just a bigger, better version of it. And sure, they would rename it to some weird thing. It went from Xbox 360 to Xbox One to then Series X and S, and I'm sure they're going to name it something weird later on, but PlayStation has really been very solid with their naming conventions. PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, and now 5, and they're going to do 6 in 2 years probably now. So I don't understand why people are upset with the name as well, because it's a Switch 2. It is the next iteration of this type of console concept. We're not going to go backwards in terms of evolution for Nintendo here. Having a home console that you can play on your TV, and it would work the exact same as if it was just developed solely for being at home, but you can also take it on the go at very minimal expense of graphical fidelity. Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want another version of that, but better, for a next generation of hardware, for a next generation of specs? If you really think about it, 2017 was 8 years ago, people. The idea that this is just a Switch Pro and isn't worthy of being a successor to the Switch is asinine. It is absolutely ridiculous to me that people are legitimately saying this with a straight face and believe it, that this is not worthy of being a new console, that they hate the name, that it should have been something different, that it should have been gimmicky, that Nintendo is losing their charm, their spunk. What are y'all on about? I try to stay objective about these things. I try to at least see things from both perspectives, and sure, I can understand the idea of, hey, I feel like Nintendo is losing a little bit of their charm that they might have had during the 3DS, DS, Wii, GameCube era. Even back to the N64, they were doing things differently than everybody else. But if you don't believe that Nintendo isn't doing things differently from the competition, simply for 5 seconds, look at any of the other competitors on the market. And sure, Xbox is easy to clown on. They get clowned on all the time. But even if you just look at Sony, like sure, they produce very, very high quality first party games, but they are few and far between. They have gone so far deep into the idea of graphical fidelity being the only thing that truly matters to them that games take almost a decade to produce, it seems, and they don't produce games that are worth buying even when they do come out. These live service games like Concord, that they spend billions, not billions, but like millions of dollars, hundreds of millions. And Nintendo is just over here making Mario platformers and great Zelda games and amazing fun party games and Smash Brothers games and Mario Kart games. Like, how can you not look at Nintendo and still see that charming company that truly cares about its consumers as compared to the other competitors on the market? Like, they are still that same company that loves making games. And no, I don't think that they have just stayed the exact same. Like, this is not the exact same company from the Wii U days, nor do I wish it to be that. Nor should anybody wish them to be the same company from the Wii U days. Because sure, the Wii U had phenomenal games, but what was that game's problem? What was that console's problem? It was a unclear console. No one knew what it was. No one bought it because they thought it was an extension to the Wii. The games came out way too late in the console's lifespan, and by the time all these really cool games had come out, no one cared, and Nintendo was a sinking ship. Now, I think they realized we need to make sure that, yes, we're being goofy and we're being fun and we're making games that no one else dares to make, and we're giving our directors insane amounts of money to make passion projects, and we won't cancel them. These games don't get canceled unless they're just genuinely horrific, in which case, Metroid Prime 4, in which case, we will just not even cancel it, but give it to another studio because this idea is so cool and we want to give this a chance. But we know it's not going to work, so let's give it to a different studio. They are so intentional with everything that they do, and they have become a little bit more business-like. I will give you that. Nintendo has become more of a business over the years, and sure, they have things like they shut down Smash tournaments, they shut down Splatoon things, they do all of these things. The Joy-Con drift, I don't believe that was their fault. I just think it was them rushing the Switch out because they knew the Wii U was failing, and they needed to get the Switch out fast, so they couldn't truly look at the development of the Switch hardware and just make it that Nintendo-proof seal of quality that they had in the past, like with the Game Boy that went through a bomb and literally still plays. I think the Switch 2 now has so much more time to go through that Nintendo seal of quality approval. I really do think Joy-Con drift will be gone. The idea of this console just breaking in half, like the Joy-Con snapping onto the sides is such a cool idea, but people have looked at that little chip inside and said, oh, it's gonna break, it's gonna bust. Nintendo has not thought about this. It's gonna break. Kids are gonna break it, you're gonna break it, it's all gonna break, it's terrible, it's flawed. Like, do you not think, people, for 1 second that Nintendo has thought of this, that they have really put this thing through the rigmarole, that they are trying to make this their best console yet? It's infuriating. I don't understand the narrative around this thing. And of course, I've even heard people say, oh, this thing's gonna have no games. Of course it has no games right now. We don't know anything about this console yet. They just wanted us to know it exists. They wanted us to know, hey, this thing is a thing that you will have this year. And it exists. And it is backwards compatible. And it is the next Switch. That is all they wanted us to know. Now, if you are sad that they didn't tell us more, I understand that. If you are disappointed that we don't know more, I understand that. I'm kind of there too. I would love to know more about this console, about the games, about all of it. But that's not what their design for this whole lifespan was. They wanted us to know what it was first, so that way all the leaks could be calmed down, and I'm sure, and another thing people are saying is that they acted based on the leaks. No, they did not. I promise you, Nintendo did not change any of their plans because of leaks. The only thing they might have changed was simply dropping it as a shadow drop instead of telling us that it was coming the next day in a trailer. Like, that is probably the only thing that they might have changed, and even then, I kind of doubt it, because Nintendo does what they want to do, because what they want to do is what they believe is the best thing for the company. They don't change because some idiot on Twitter decided, oh, I'm gonna leak every single thing about this console and make it all ruined for the people who really just wanted to be surprised. Nintendo doesn't change their mindset just because we decide things are going to be leaked. So no, that is not why Nintendo did this. But what they were planning on the whole time was just simply for us to not only have it revealed, but to have a ton of information at a later date, so that way they could build up a ton of hype right before release, rather than having that hype fizzle out a little bit over the months. Because I'm anticipating personally a June release. A June release sounds about right. Having that April presentation, they have month to go through all of the hands-on tests that they were planning, and then a little bit at the beginning of June, I believe there are a couple across the world, and then boom, in June, they will release the end console and we will know a ton about it and be excited for it then. And then graphically speaking, we seriously do not know a thing about this console yet. I have seen so many people critique the console, how it's going to be so far behind graphically, when we have literally only seen 15 to 20 seconds of gameplay, and it wasn't even focus gameplay that we could really zoom in on and understand what it will truly look like. It's not even a trailer for a game. It was a little bit of a Mario Kart clip out of a console reveal trailer that literally they only did that because they needed to put something on the TV and they needed to put something on the screen. Like, seriously, people, what are we going on about for the Switch 2? It will be a phenomenal console. It will be the next generation of Switch, and we are going to understand that when we see more of what they have in store. The features of the console, the UI, the graphical abilities of the console, the games itself. Once we see the new 3D Mario game, which I guarantee you will be at the April Direct, once we see that running on the console, a trailer for that, how amazing that game specifically is going to look, everybody's doubts are going to go away. Everybody who says you can't tell a difference is going to be able to tell the difference. So I don't want to go on about this too long, but it is seriously annoying to me to see how many people have been just completely going out of pocket to say that the Switch 2 is going to be a failure, it's going to be horrible, it's not anything special, Nintendo is losing their charm. Like, from both sides of the aisles, I have seen non-Nintendo fans hating and Nintendo fans wishing it was different, and I just don't understand what anybody expected this to be other than what it was, which is what I think is going to be one of the greatest consoles ever made. So I am excited to see more on the April Direct, and I will try, unless there is something completely egregious like this, I will try not to talk a ton about it and just overblow you guys with information. I will keep it minimal unless things are officially announced. So, moving on to the next story. But before that, if you've made it this far already, make sure you like and subscribe today's video if you enjoyed the content. Click the notification bell. All of those buttons down below help the channel immensely. I appreciate your support. Consider my membership program for early access to all my videos. Now let's move on to the news. Next story is the Nintendo Direct, not the April Nintendo Direct that we know is happening on April 2nd for the Switch 2, but a potential final Switch 1 February Nintendo Direct. Now, when I made my June Direct video last year talking about predictions and discussions, etc., I truly did double down on the idea of that being the final Nintendo Switch 1 Direct. And I'll tell you right now, I still think that is the case. I still think that June last year was the final Switch 1 based Direct. And if we do somehow end up getting another Direct in February, I don't think it will be a regular one. It will probably just be a Nintendo Direct Mini, a partner showcase, some sort of indie Direct. I don't know what it could be. Whatever it ends up being, it will probably just be whatever tier below a standard big Direct would be. So initially this information seems to have come from Nate the Hate, which obviously is now famous for the guy who predicted exactly when Nintendo was revealing the Switch 2, Thursday of January 16th, a day that will go down in history, and Pioro obviously backed him up on that, but Nate the Hate was the first to put himself out there and say it is coming Thursday, and he was correct. So a lot of people are putting a lot of stock into February having some sort of presentation. I just don't think it is going to be a regular Direct. Another piece of information that we got from PH Brazil is that he had some sort of podcast, and this is from a Fama board here. He had a podcast called XDC News, News number 55, and he shared that he believed that there was going to be a Switch 1 Direct in February and a Pokemon Presents in February, and that in that one Switch 1 Direct, there will be one final big game for the Switch 1 in what he calls a niche but beloved series. So a new game in a niche but beloved series, he says, is going to come in this Direct in February. Hey guys, it is Editing Ray here, and I am interrupting this video to say that Brazil actually responded to the Fama Board message that was recapping his podcast. He was clarifying what this person was saying and what he actually meant at the time of when he said what he did on his podcast, and he says that in response to there being a new game in a beloved niche series, that it is just a single new game, and it has nothing to do with a niche beloved series separate from a final big game of the Switch 1 era. I don't understand fully if he means that the game is from a bigger series, if he's trying to literally say, like, no, it's not a niche series, it's a big series, or if he's just overall saying that, no, it's not niche, but, you know, it's probably, like, medium size. Like, I don't know where he's getting that descriptor from, but I guess we're going to see eventually if he ends up being correct. So that is just a piece of information that I thought you guys should know and that I should add to this video. Now, here's the thing, right? I thought that June would be the last Direct, and I seemed to have been proven correct up until this point, because obviously in June, they revealed Mario & Luigi Brothership, Mario Jamboree, Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, all of these games, and then later in the year of 2024, they just shadow dropped a Xenoblade Chronicles X reveal trailer for March of 2025. And so that essentially filled out their calendar up until when a lot of us thought that the Switch 2 would either be revealed or released. And so far, it has truly followed that type of formula. I mean, if you look at it, like every single month had some sort of big thing towards the end of the year. We had Donkey Kong just this past week, and coming up in March is Xenoblade Chronicles X. So February doesn't typically have a lot of Nintendo releases, and there isn't going to be a February release unless they have a Direct in which they shadow drop some game. Like, I know Nate the Hate had said Kirby Planet Robobot a while back, and I think that is entirely possible. That was one of my games in my 3DS video that I said I thought Kirby Planet Robobot would come to the Switch, but unless they shadow drop some sort of game in a Direct, I don't think that there will be any first-party games in February. So then in March, obviously, Xenoblade Chronicles X is the first-party game for that month, and then in April, we now have confirmed information that the very second day of that month is the big blowout for the Switch 2. That's when we're going to know every single thing about the console, when it comes out, the games for it, all of that. So it doesn't make sense to me personally for Nintendo to have a Direct around the Switch 1 revealing information about their games like a month and a half before the Switch 2 gets revealed, and not revealed, but like the Switch 2 gets blowout information. What sort of games could they possibly have to reveal to us in that time frame? Because I guess if this Brazil guy is to be believed, and if Nate the Hate is to be believed, I guess it makes sense to think, okay, you have Kirby Planet Robobot or some other niche game, perhaps a Fire Emblem game that was also speculated, some other game, they would release that and shadow drop that in February, or just announce it for later part of the year for the Switch 1. And then they could update us on Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And then obviously with this other presentation, this Pokemon Presents that they were saying, we could get more information on Pokemon ZA. And I think that's totally possible. In fact, I do believe this guy in saying that February will have a Pokemon Presents. I just am not so sold on a Nintendo Direct. Now, the only thing I think does sell me on that idea is the possibility of third parties wanting to get their final information, their final games out onto the Switch 1 before the Switch 2 completely and totally takes over. But for Nintendo's perspective, why would they want to garner up hype for a game unless it was a shadow drop, and unless they just didn't have a whole lot of other announcements? I just don't understand why they would want to garner up all this hype for games that would be coming to the Switch 1 when they have the Switch 2 around the corner. Like, I feel like any game that they would reveal would only ever be washed out by the Switch 2 and would take up any and all hype from that. Now, I remember back in the Switch days, the first year, a couple years of that console, they were really trying to push the idea of the 3DS also being alongside the Switch because they were concerned, that the Switch maybe fail and they have big problems because obviously their handhelds have always succeeded. Their DS, 3DS lines were big successes, and so they anticipated that to continue being their lifeline if that needed to be their lifeline, but the Switch obviously was such a big success, so I hope now this is very possible because it's possible because they might be doing something similar to that, where they see the Switch as their ultimate lifeline is the Switch 2 just totally catastrophically fails. I do not think that will be the case, but that's the only way I could see them even considering marketing new games for the Switch 1 and then not focusing entirely on the Switch 2 and making all those games exclusive to that console. Because if you look at the Switch 1, where it's at, how that is selling, obviously they're going to be like, we might want to hang on to this. But this past year was also, I believe, the worst selling year since the first year of the console's life. So I don't know, man. They could truly be having these games and holding on to them and just wanting to continue the Switch hype. And obviously, it's Switch 2 backwards compatibility, so you could play all these games on the Switch 2 as well. Maybe that's the reason they're not worried about sharing these games. But it does seem like anything that would be Switch 1 related would get totally and utterly swallowed up by the Switch 2 unless it was some sort of shadow drop. So hopefully if there is some sort of direct, it does that and doesn't take away from the Switch 2, especially if this franchise is as niche and beloved as Brazil PH is saying, because I'm sure the fan base would be very unhappy if they just decided to release whatever that game is at the last second and it doesn't sell well and Nintendo goes, oh well, no one wants it. Well, no guys, it's not that no one wants it, it's that you released it at the worst possible time. So I don't know, we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out. Now, the next piece of news I want to talk about today is related to games in general. A video game analyst, his name is Matthew Ball of Epilon, released his State of Video Gaming in 2025 report. This thing was massive, by the way, but the biggest thing that has absolutely blown up on Twitter, over 28.6 million impressions on that app. I just can't even believe this. He says, there is hope around the industry that the publisher Take-Two will use the unprecedented excitement around GTA 6 in order to bump up the price of that game to $100. $100. Now, woof, this is a big story, and it is a scary story, to be honest, and I don't think that we are too far away from a world where the price of games and consoles at large just continues to go up and up and up until this hobby no longer becomes a hobby, but a straight up luxury. And as things stand, a lot of people truly believe that it is already a luxury to have these items. Nintendo is the only company that has really stayed fast to affordable prices, with their biggest and best console yet being the Nintendo Switch at only $300, and their games mostly staying at $60, sometimes being $50, and with one exception of a $70 Tears of the Kingdom. Moving forward into the next generation, I am genuinely scared to see how this industry moves, and I honestly would totally believe that they would use GTA's incredible hype to make this game almost $100, which would be an egregious gap, but you can't tell me that people wouldn't pay for it. I mean, GTA 6 is one of the most highly anticipated games of all time, if not the most highly anticipated game ever, period. So they could absolutely use this to make greedy corporations even greedier and get these games out at higher prices. Now, this is what I think. I don't think if GTA 6 does somehow jump up from $70 standard, according to a lot of other industry veterans such as Sony and Microsoft, I don't think it would immediately just jump from 70 to 100. But if this game is as big as they say it is, as the reports are saying, as highly anticipated as it is, all of those things combined, it could stir up the perfect type of storm to make this game $80 or $90. And if they do put it at 100, which is absolutely insane, how do you think the rest of the industry would follow suit? Oh, they would follow suit, all right. They would make all of their other games $80 at least, or $90, or even if a game comes along big enough, another Last of Us type game, a Horizon game, games that all of these IPs have such large and lasting impacts on so many people, they would undoubtedly make these games $100 if they felt people would just shell out the money for it. So this is a scary story, because the idea of basically companies turning their backs on their consumers and saying, we know you'll buy it, is a bluff. It's a bluff, to be honest, because all of a sudden the power now comes back to us, the consumer, the buyer. If we decide that this is okay, they will continue to do it. They will continue to increase the price, to release games at unfathomable prices, and for consoles to be higher priced than ever. Now, PCs already kind of hit that 1,000 mark, but if you really are believing that Sony won't take initiative here and be like, well, shoot, PS6, $1,000 straight out the gate, I think it's crazy to not think they would do that. I know inflation worldwide has been pretty bad, and people like Masahiro Sakurai have come out and said that for the amount of money and time and effort that goes into creating games, that they're kind of cheap for the amount of time and energy you get out of your money. Especially if you think about it like going to a movie. If you go to a movie and you get a popcorn and some soda pop and you watch the movie itself, you'll walk out of there spending hardly like $40, $50 sometimes just for yourself. And that is insane. But if you think about it as a game being $50, $60, you get tens, sometimes hundreds of hours out of those games, and that's the type of money that keeps on giving to you. But with a movie, you only spend like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then you're done. That experience is over and your money is gone. So honestly, I do believe there is a pretty solid argument for these games being a lot more expensive than they are, especially something like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Persona 5, these massive games that you will take over 100 hours of content and just completely and utterly consume all of it and enjoy every second of it, compared to something like a 2D Mario game, in which people would say, oh, it only is about 10 to 15 hours to complete, if that, and, that game should be a little bit less. So it obviously would be game-to-game basis and amount of content, but here's the thing, right? I push back on this so hard because even if you release a game at $60 instead of $70, let's say a game took like $200 million worth of money to create, which, by the way, if that is the case, that is a ridiculous amount of money, and you as a company need to reconsider how we cut these budget costs while also staying quality and staying faithful to your consumers. But still, that is a ridiculous amount of money to produce a video game in 2025. Now still, $200 million, that is how much. Let's say that game ends up going on to be a big hit. It sells 10 million copies total for $60 a pop. They didn't make the price go down even once. They just kept it at $60 the whole time, unapologetically, similar to how Nintendo works with a lot of their first-party games. Let's say then it was just mostly digital sales. Like, of course, physical sales, you're going to have to split some of that money. Let's say it was like a 30%. It was like 30% physical and then 70% digital. That is how the market is moving towards anyways, and that's an entirely possible outcome. So then they would split some of that money with the retailers and everything that they needed to spend on marketing. So they would probably still be left with around $400 million to $500 million, which is still a phenomenal success. Like, that is one of the biggest successes you could ever hope for in the industry, and that's with keeping your game at $60. So really, the problem is not... Well, first of all, it's the budget. These games like Sony makes are incredibly expensive to the point where even if it does have crazy success, it doesn't hardly even break even because they spent so much freaking money making the game look ridiculously realistic for no reason, and they didn't focus on the gameplay as much as they should have. And the storyline obviously is always going to be pretty good in Sony games, but this other stuff is just way too expensive. So that's the first problem, is the budgets. Let's cut back on the budgets of these games. Let's not make $200 million games. Secondly, focus more on the marketing of your game rather than increasing the price. Get it out there to people who you know are going to be interested in it. And third and finally, just make good games. Like, straight up, don't focus on live service multiplayer garbage. Focus on good single player experiences that really are just totally headed up by a creative vision of a person who loves making games, and people will follow. People who love games can see a game that was made with love and care, and they go out of their way to watch video essays on it, to buy it, to just keep stirring the pot on those games, not even when it comes out, but for years after it comes out. People are still talking about Persona 5, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Mario Galaxy. All of these classic games from the past are still being talked about today because they were true passions of love. And people love passions of love in their industry. They just do. So instead of raising the price, let's go back to basics. Let's make games as cheaply as possible without cutting on the types of people you pay. Without cutting on the people, because they're the only reason you're here, that they are making your game to begin with. But let's cut back on the amount of money we spend on the graphics of these games, on making these games as insane as they are. I still cannot believe to this day that movies like Godzilla are only made at like $10 million budgets. Like some of these movies that look so realistic were only made at that amount of money. Now, I don't know how the employees were or if there was crunch or whatever, but it's possible is what I'm trying to say. It is possible. So let's move forward with the idea of this being possible and not be greedy. But if it does come a time where $100 games, $80 games, $90 games are the standard, we, the consumer, fight back. People can hate capitalism all they want. That's simply how it works in America here. I don't know worldwide how that works, but capitalism in America is the way. That's how we, the consumer, can fight back, is by saying, I don't want to buy this game for this price. I refuse to do so. So just don't. Wait for it to go on sale, or simply don't buy the game. Now, I know for a lot of people that is a hard pill to swallow, and for me personally, I don't know if I will ever come to that conclusion of saying, you know, like for Nintendo specifically. For the other consoles, I would be happy to drop it. But I just don't know if I specifically could ever say, you know what, I'm just never going to buy Nintendo products again because they just went super uber in one direction of money. And I know a lot of people would probably follow suit with that. But if we could all come together and just say, hey, we're not buying this. It's too much money. You are being too greedy. Then the consumers would be in control, and the people making these products would have to bend the knee. They would have to make things that they know people are going to buy at reasonable prices. So don't be afraid. This may happen, and they will probably try to make it happen, but you are in control. Use your dollar to speak with your voice. It's similar to voting. You matter. Your vote matters. Your money matters. Put it in the direction you wish it to go. And in this case, don't put your money towards what you don't want to be the future of the industry. And if it ever gets to a point where it is so egregious, I promise you, I will be right there with you. Now, finally, our last piece of news, Silksong, Hollow Knight Silksong. Y'all, I have been waiting for this game for so long, and so have the rest of the Hollow Knight community. Back in 2019, we got our first look at Hollow Knight Silksong. It was initially supposed to be DLC, and the Team Cherry team decided, you know, they had so many ideas, they just wanted to keep developing and keep working. At least that's what I assume is happening, because they have not said a thing to us, which I think should be different. They should definitely be communicating to us more, but they're not, so it is what it is. We have heard almost nothing for years after year after year. And now finally, it is 2025, and we might have a little piece of news. One of the developers behind Silksong and Hollow Knight, William, he changed his Twitter account profile to a piece of cake. Now, when I first heard this, I was like, what in the world? What are we talking about? This is so weird. Then he also tweeted out on January 15th, the day before the Switch 2 was revealed, something big is coming. Keep your eyes closed tomorrow. Which is such a weird thing to say. Keep your eyes closed rather than keep your eyes open. I don't know what to take about that. But then the cake profile picture that he has is just a piece of chocolate cake. If you reverse image search it, it comes to a link that is April 2nd, 2024. That is the date of this link. Now, the link obviously just leads to some sort of cake thing. It has nothing to do with Silksong, but April 2nd, if you have been anywhere the past month, the past week, I suppose now, you would know April 2nd, 2025, this year, is the day the Switch 2 is going to have its blowout presentation. Now, the Silksong trailer in 2019 was at E3 for the Nintendo Direct presentation, and I believe, I don't know if this is entirely the case, but I think at some point, Silksong was supposed to be a timed exclusive for the Switch. Now, we have no idea if that is still the case, because at Xbox, there was an Xbox presentation a couple years back talking about Silksong, and I think it's going to end up being multi-platform, but at some point, I do think Silksong was supposed to be a Nintendo-type exclusive for just a little bit. Now, I don't know if that is going to be the case because of how much time has passed and how all of this worked out, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was some sort of contract that Team Cherry has with Nintendo that basically says, hey, day one, your game is going to be on our console, and it wouldn't surprise me if that contract evolved into Nintendo giving them money, endless amounts probably, to help develop this game, and then they also said in return, release your game on Switch 1 and Switch 2, help us make this Switch 2 hype even bigger by announcing the release date of your game on our console. And it wouldn't even surprise me even more if Silksong became a day and date launch title with the Switch 2. And that, my friends, would be absolutely insane and would continue to double down on Nintendo's philosophy throughout the Nintendo Switch generation of saying indies deserve the spotlight. We want to give indies a bigger platform, and what better way to give an indie a bigger platform than at the Switch 2 Direct, where every single person's eyes will be on the Switch 2 Direct. That is a heck of a way to announce the release date for one of the most highly anticipated indie games ever. Now, I don't think this is a coincidence. It simply could not be a coincidence that this developer is putting this piece of cake on his profile and that it links back to a date of April 2nd of 2024, and then he tweets out something big is coming tomorrow, and that was the day the Switch 2 was revealed. It's just too many pieces of evidence back to back to back. It can't be random. I really do believe this is it. This is them in their weird way catering to the insane community of Hollow Knight that has lost their minds and will go through whatever hoops and hurdles they have to. It's a heck of a marketing strategy, I'll tell you that. They are definitely trying to tell us April 2nd is when we get our Silksong update, and if they don't, then I don't understand why this hasn't changed. If this wasn't their intention, I don't understand why their profile picture wouldn't have been different by now, or they wouldn't have taken back this tweet, or at least clarified to some extent that it wouldn't be there, because I don't think they would keep up this false hype, this false hope, if it wasn't coming on that day. So I can almost guarantee you, to this viewer listening right now, that Silksong will get an update on April 2nd, and I would even go as far as to say it will probably be a launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2, perhaps even a timed exclusive for about a month or so. That would get a lot of people to go out to the stores and buy a Switch 2 for sure, outside of just Mario Kart and outside of what other first-party games Nintendo has in store for the first part of that year. This would be some type of trump card for Nintendo. And of course, Team Cherry has been working really hard. I don't doubt that they have been adding so much content to this game the whole time, but it has taken so long with no update that it does make me think they have some sort of agreement with Nintendo, and maybe I could be totally wrong on that, but I think it does work. I think the dots do connect there. So we will just have to wait until April 2nd to see if this comes true. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of this little bit of news rant. I had a bunch of stuff I needed to talk about and a bunch of stuff I had to get out, so I'm glad I could do that in this video, and I'm glad you made it to the very end. Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on all of these news stories. Do you believe Silksong is coming April 2nd? Are we going to get a reveal? Will games go to $100? Will you end up buying the Switch 2? Is it a disappointment? All of the topics I had talked about today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to today's content if you enjoyed. Just simply clicking all of those buttons below help out this channel and this little community so much. So I would appreciate if you would do that. Click on the left video that's popping up right now for what YouTube seems to believe that you will really like from my channel, and on the right playlist about whatever I had put up for my videos. My name is Ray. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a great day.